Thank you very much for having me here. I'm going to talk about something today that I've been thinking about for a long time. Maybe I wait first until everybody's in, sorry. Have you ever tried to draw a hand? I'm not going to do the hands up thing. For some reason I don't like it, but we could clap our hands. Who has ever tried to draw a hand? Thank you very much. Who has found it really hard to draw a hand? Yeah, it'd be funny if the noise level would be different, because it is extremely hard to draw a hand. Now, who has wondered why it is so hard to draw a hand, given that we see them every day, we use them all the time? Anyone ever wondered? Clap your hands if you wondered why it's hard. Well, I think the reason is that we don't see our hands really clearly. And the reason why we don't see our hands clearly is because we use them all the time. We don't think about them anymore. And, you know, we have them in our field of sight and we think, yeah, I know my hands, you know, and we use them so much that it seems absurd to even imagine that we can't know how hands look. If you have any experience learning to draw at, you know, design school, art school, you learn that, you know, drawing is not a matter of, you know, moving your fingers with the pen. If you can write your name, you can draw pretty much anything as far as motorical skills. The reason why we have a hard time drawing cars and dogs and hands and people is because we don't know how they look. We haven't studied these shapes, and we haven't studied how, you know, these things that we try to draw work. Because it's not enough to just know that, okay, I see 2 bones here with the thumb and I see 3 with the others. That, for a lot of people, that's already a lot of new information, actually. That the joints are thicker than the rest, and that somehow magically, you know, these fingers, the joints, the thinner and the thicker parts go together. That the hand looks like the fingers have very different lengths, but as a matter of fact, you know, part of this illusion comes from the hand being round here. That when I fold the fingers, suddenly, magically, we have a straight line. All these things we don't notice because we don't study our hand, and because another thing that we don't notice is actually our focus is really tiny. You know, we think that we see everything that is in our field of sight, but most of it we construct. We're like, yeah, I know this building, how it works. And we live in this illusion that we see everything in a sharp way, while the truth is, you know, and scientists say so, you know, that what we really see sharp is of the size of the fingernail of our thumb when we, you know, stretch it out like that. That's all we see sharp, and the rest is just a construction. You can test it, you know, try to observe yourself, you know, compare it to your thumb like that, and then, you know, look around like a paranoid person, you notice it's true, everything else is sort of a cloud, you know we have these blind spots. So there's a tiny bit in our field of sight that we see sharply, and the other thing is that we rarely think about how things work. You know, it's not enough to just know the shape of the hand, that there is this weird gap here in between that's very hard to draw, actually, if you give it a try. But that, you know, the bones don't just go until here, they go through our hands. Yeah, of course they do, right? But there's this other weird stuff here on top as well. And, you know, the more you study the hand, the more extreme it gets. There's like hundreds, maybe even thousands of bones in there. And the more you know how this works, the easier it becomes to draw. At first it's harder, but, you know, you really need to understand how a hand works to draw it well. And as if that were not difficult enough, you start to understanding now why drawing hands is so hard. You also need to understand how we perceive things. So you need to understand how it works, and you need to understand how we perceive things. So learning how to draw is very much learning how to see. Is learning to see how, you know, something looks. It's learning to understand how it works, and it's learning to even understand the own process of perception. That applies not only to drawing, of course, it applies to design. And you might say, well, that was a big, big, big detour to explain something we already know. Because, you know, everybody here has said it today. If you want to do good work for your clients, you know, you need to understand them, you need to talk to them, and you do not only just need to understand how the client works, you know, how the hand works, you also need to understand how he's perceived from his user. You need to understand the eye, right? So you can create that seemingly simple thing called website that tries to connect these two things. So it's very comparable, you know, learning to design is very comparable to learning to draw. And it is very, very painful as well. It's very, very painful. You know, you hear a lot of, you know, snarky comments, how the marketing department doesn't understand things, or the CEO, you know, he's busy and he has a wife that has certain tastes or so. That's like the cliches, you know, why it's so hard. Usually the client actually is kind of stupid, but we still need to listen to him. And, you know, then other people say, no, there's no stupid client. You're always stupid. You need to be more, you know, positive. You need to be more open, right? We need to show empathy. You know, good designers show empathy. We need to, you know, open our minds, you know, and always be open for everything. And then everything is going to be good. But this is not really how it works in practice. And in practice, as far as I know, maybe you have a completely different experience. In practice, it's extremely painful. All this is very, very, very painful. And actually, you know, exactly in these moments where you think, well, you know, I work with newspapers, so it's very easy for me to say, the marketing department, they always want these banners, they don't understand responsive design, they don't get it mobile, they don't get mobile, everybody's mobile. Everybody in the marketing department is mobile, and yet they don't get it, they're stupid, right? But I found that precisely in these moments where it's really, really painful and you start going crazy, you don't know anymore how to express yourself, actually you learn most. You learn most. And how come? That's what I try to explain. So there seems to be this vertical axe. I call it the Steve Jobs axe of design. You know, Steve Jobs famously said, design is not just how it looks and feels, design is how it works, right? So if it works good, if it works well, it's good design. If it's broken, it's bad design. But actually he said not just. So look and feel seems to be part of design as well. Design is not just how it looks and feels. Design is how it works. It means that these both things seem to play a role. So you have the functional Steve Jobs axis, and then in the vertical, you have the form factor, the look and feel, you know, what everybody sees, the details. You have that axis. Now, when we develop a product, usually, I don't know, but Dan said, now we start with the details. I'm not so sure about that. I think we start with the very basics, and we think, so what is this? What is it for? And what is its goal? You know, and we try to get the basics, the basic idea right. You know, we ask the client, what do you want to achieve? Where are your problems? Who are you? Who works with you? And which part of the process doesn't work? What do you want to, where you want to go? And then we go and ask the user, what do you think is he trying to achieve? You know, what are your problems with him? And we try to get a very good understanding of the process, of the basic structure, and we try to build an information architecture that, you know, does just the most basic things that the client tells us, you know, that matches the expectation of the user, and then we take the gems out of the structure on the client side, you know, to exceed the expectation. Often, the client is not even aware what these gems are. They have so much stuff, and they want to communicate everything at once. So anyway, like me right now. So we get the basics right. We get, you know, we start building wireframes. I hear this is not fashionable now anymore, actually, wireframes. That's kind of insecure about that. We do that. We build wireframes, and we try to be modern and make interactive wireframes, which actually is not modern either. You have to do it on paper now, and then it's not called a wireframe. I don't know. I'm getting confused about these things sometimes, but that's what we do. We can't directly build a website. Like sometimes I hear, oh no, we go, we're agile, everything is directly built. For me, it's like an architect saying, like, what do I need plans for? Give me a couple of bricks, I build a house. So we do these wireframes, right? And we study how the client works, and we get the basics right. We say, like, this is your problem. In case of one particular newspaper, actually, their main problem is, believe it or not, to get people to sign up. Because if people are signed up, big wonder, it's easier for them to target advertisement, and actually they have a higher return on investment. So all we have to do with this newspaper design is getting people to sign up. Pretty simple, but it took a long time to find that out. So anyway, so we get the basics right, we find a way how people would sign up, and then we add detail. So we add detail in these micro interactions that then mentioned today. We try to add detail in the way the thing works, but also a wonder in a way that things look. Actually, it's kind of important for people how things look as well. We tend to forget that at tech events where we're sort of, on a Jacob Nielsen movement again, where we are all, I know it's the design is how it works. It's not just how it works, it's also how it looks. So we add detail, and this is usually happening later on. Now, if you have a lot of experience, you will be more likely to build a stable, basic macro interaction, right? You'll be more likely to build a good information architecture, good interaction design. And if you're experienced, you will also be more likely to see the details, because that's what makes the designer. The designer actually has a trained eye, like someone drawing a lot, he has a trained eye for different kinds of hands. We see details better. That doesn't mean that design is always completely invisible. It's invisible to the trained eye. So designers have that ability to see things that others don't see directly. Typography is a very good example. That it's not obvious for most people, good design doesn't mean that they don't feel it. And here again, typography is a very good example. Few people will see good typography, but everybody will feel it. So the designer is very, very helpful in all these things. The information architect is very, very helpful in building. The experienced information architect is very helpful in building a basic structure. And the more experienced screen typographer will be very helpful in dealing with typography on the screen and many other little details. Now, this is all not so painful because we've done it before. We can do this in that wonderful state of flow, right, that we all try to get into because, work shouldn't be hard. Work should be fun. We should make a game out of everything, enjoy ourselves. And, if we don't feel like working, we're having a Snickers because now everything is completely different. Work's not hard anymore. If it's not fun, don't do it. Well, completely wrong. Actually, work is only then fun when you have that feeling of being stretched, right? So you're being stretched when you go and interview that client. You're being stretched when you go and interview the user on the other side. This is all can be really painful because if it's not, you're not learning something new, and you're very likely not to do good work then. If you're not in pain when you work, yeah, maybe, you're just having fun. So what happens then is, so you're in pain doing all these things, but what's really, really painful is once you're done and you ship the product, and then you get the feedback, then it really hurts. Because, as much as a designer, you want to be cocky and say like, yeah, I see more than you see. I'm a designer. You don't know what I know about typography. Since people have this really narrow field of sight, they will see things very precisely that you didn't see. And sometimes it's extremely embarrassing what you didn't see. The cocky designer should have seen everything. He didn't. It's almost impossible these days to see everything because you need to look at it on a million devices, right? So it's very, very painful. Now, the comfortable part here is that Well, you know, when you have a client and, you know, you didn't like him so much because the marketing department, you know, and the CEO is kind of a dick. You're like, yeah, let's find another client. Or you can, you know, if you have a good relationship, you can try to actually then start picking up that user feedback and get hurt. It's like this, you know, it's really hurtful. And no matter how experienced you are, the more users you have on the other side, the harder they will hit. When this happened the first time to me, I was, I think 29, I did a redesign for Deutsche Telekom. You know, and millions of users came, and I was very cocky and very sure of myself. This is the greatest thing ever. And it was traumatic. It's actually a month or two I was in complete shock. Because not only was the feedback harsh, they were also right. And that hurts, right? And it's not being wrong that hurts, it's understanding that you're wrong that hurts. Because we're so good at saying, well, they're just jealous, they don't understand it, that's just one guy, that might be right, but it's just a detail. We have so many excuses to, you know, try to not learn to see. Try to not learn to understand, because it hurts, it's being stretched. And if you have millions of users, all with this, you know, fingernail sight looking at your shit, and they see all the mistakes, it's very painful. So you get used to this a little bit. You know, I started from scratch. I went to Japan after this redesign. 4 years of pink with Deutsche Telekom was just too much. Started my own little company, and again, you know, was designing dog hair salons and, you know, little sites that no one would see, and getting back into the cocky mode. I design big websites, so, you know, I don't know what I do if one user doesn't like it. You easily get back into that mode, and started my own company. And if you're small, it's actually kind of good to go and fight, right? You go out, you take on the big guys, like Edward Tufte was one of those. And, you know, started to get to build a name with screen typography, which is sort of the IA thing. And then someone asked, hey, Mr. Tufte, what do you think about that IA guy there? What is that website looks kind of nice, right? And he's like, well, it's kind of designy, and, you know, having such a big font actually just makes clear that he's not really in control of English. That's not a native speaker. It just highlights the mistakes in his text, right? And I was like, fuck yeah. Edward Tufte attacked me, you know, little guy in a little back office in Tokyo that no one's ever heard of. Best thing that could happen. So it was like next Edelman, you know, because they were like using fake blogs for Walmart, and then they had this tie-up with Technorad to take these motherfuckers on. I hate PR companies, right? They're dishonest. So yeah, that worked as well. So I think that's my only Wikipedia entry I have is in this Edelman discussion there. And, you know, so I worked my way up, and, you know, I published things that are controversial, but, you know, being in a branding agency for 4 years, you learn one thing, is that you don't attack people if you're not absolutely sure that you can withstand any attack that comes back. So you choose your fights well, and you always, you know, fight up. You never fight down. You hope that, you know, the negativity comes from the bigger people. It really always helps. The bigger guy always loses if he attacks the smaller guy, and you learn. I mean, and of course he was right, you know. He mentioned something about side notes, and that doesn't work, Edward Tufte, and he was right. It was like, oh shit, I have to get rid of the side notes, you know, so it looks even worse now. If people come and say, there's no, you know, even, I don't know what you're talking about with the side notes. And, you know, same thing with typography. You know, I used Neue Helvetica on my blog back in 2005, and, you know, I was very proud of the typography. And then someone said, it renders really badly on PC Neue Helvetica. And I was like, oh shit, I gotta put Arial on there. And I learned most things about web design just discussing with people. And actually the best teachers were the trolls. So the more negative these people are, you know, and some people get obsessed, right? They spend day and night just attacking you. The more negative they are, the better it was. This is something I think this it might be new for most of you. I'm coming on stage defending trolls, but think about this situation where you're designing something. You're one guy in a little back office in Tokyo, and you're trying to make a point about screen typography, and then you have 3, 4, 5, 10, 100 people that answer, and they're very critical because actually you're wrong, you're new to this. And then there are about 2 people that get completely obsessed. And their obsession is to bring you down. They try to find any mistake you make and blow it up, and they try to find a big mistake, so they're really, really helpful. Now, at a certain point, I had enough clients, so I didn't need so much of that fighting anymore. And everything went well, and you get back into that mode where you think, yeah, the client and marketing department is annoying, and well, I have enough of a voice to, the 2, 3 critics, and actually also get a little bit better as time goes by. You're getting back into sort of a comfortable mode until you launch your own application. Because then you cannot hide anymore. You can't tell yourself, yeah, this problem actually, I think the marketing department is responsible because they said we need to put that banner, and because that banner is there, then there's the other problems. And yeah, I don't need to feel the pain. But if you have your own application out there, there's no excuses. There's no excuse. You can blame Apple, okay? Sometimes also you can blame Apple. So, we have this application out there. It's a writing application. It has 700,000 users. And yeah, it's very painful. It's very painful every day. You look at the App Store, and to be honest, the 5-star reviews, it's cool. Yeah, I read them too. The 4-star, I read them as well. 3-star, read them. It's often the most interesting. Is around 3 or 4-star reviews. But the most interesting are the 1-star reviews. They're fantastic. And a lot of people complain, oh, I can't answer to them. But you know what? That's the best thing. It's the best thing that you can't answer. You can't be defensive. You need to let them sink in. I actually use a stoner language to explain what I do with like very unfair, completely wrong, completely nasty comments that have no point. It's probably even a competitor that wrote them. These really horrible comments, completely wrong, and they're insulting, people calling me an asshole and so on. I smoke them. I'm like, I smoke them. And what happens when I smoke them is I try to get out the information. Because the nastier the comment, these intense things, the more valuable the information. Really true. So these people often focus on these details. That's the point, right? These people that harshly attack you, they often take something out of context. Then what can you do? You can cry, or you can say, well, okay, they take that out of context, but often there is that detail that will help you to improve. And as with Edward Tufte, you can make them really look bad if you fix it. They look really, really bad because they said something in an environment where they can't correct it. So on that, on the blog with the comment, it was really horrible what I did there because I was small, so I had no big, publishing responsibility. I would always fix anything that people would point out and not react to it. And that's what I do now as well. So when I get attacked, at first I look, is it the big guy? If it's a big guy, I'm like, yes. Rarely happens because, we're now in the Twitter community, we're all friends, and, Twitter and so on is for advertising anyway, so you don't attack people. It's considered really bad manners. And, you get a bad reputation. People don't show up when you're also at one of these events because they're like, yeah, this is this guy, we don't like him. He's not always nice because you need to be always nice, right? If you're not always nice, if you're not kind, you're not a good person, you're not a digital person. But as a matter of fact, you should be thankful anytime someone is negative to you, anytime someone attacks you, because that's when you learn. And even if it's unfair, what you do is you just strip out the style. You know, when I speak online, people say like, oh, he has bad skin, he has a lisp, he has, you know, a nasal voice, a stupid Swiss accent gets on my nerves, you know. They do that, and in the beginning, it's really hurtful because you're naked. Look at me, like it's really unfair, you know. How can you be so evil? But it's much better than when you go out and you go in the speaker's room and they say, great job, you know. And actually, you feel actually they didn't like that. Why don't you tell me what was wrong? I'd rather have that than the phony kindness. So with all the talk about openness and empathy and, you know, being nice to each other and the bad trolls that make the world a bad place, I actually say, well, just look at it as information. It's inevitable. People will be eventually nasty, and even yourself, you know. Is it better if you tell someone, oh, great job, and then behind this person's back you're like, that really sucked? Is that better? Is that friendly? Is that kind? No, I don't think so. So be thankful if people, you know, give you feedback, and if it's really nasty and if it's really bad style, just strip it out and get the information out you can. That way you will be able to improve on these micro interactions much more than by reading a book, which doesn't mean you shouldn't read this book. I'm going to read it on my way home. Thank you very much.